Hi, this is Gravity. It's a sure thing. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about the kings of Israel, but specifically we're going to look at the southern kingdom of Judah. But to quickly recap, the children of Israel requested Samuel to anoint a king like other nations. However displeasing, Samuel anointed Saul as king. After reigning for 20 years, Saul killed himself, being wounded at the Battle of Gilboa. David was then anointed and reigned for 40 years, and later made his son Solomon reign after him. God granted Solomon wisdom and riches, and the children of Israel enjoyed the peace during Solomon's reign by David's many wars. Solomon does what is evil in the sight of the Lord, as he goes after Ashtoreth, the goddess of Sidonians, after Milcom, the detestable idol of Ammonites, after Chemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, and after Molech, the detestable idol of the sons of Ammon. This was the great sin of Solomon, of which God divided the kingdom. But for David's sake, the punishment did not come upon Solomon, but upon his son Rehoboam.
When Solomon died, his son Rehoboam took the throne. Rehoboam ruled over the divided southern kingdom, in which he ruled only 2 tribes. Rehoboam, like his father, began to get snared in idolatry through his many foreign wives and did evil in the sight of the Lord. In the 17th year of his reign, king of Egypt Shishak comes against Judah. When Rehoboam and his counselors humble themselves, the word comes to the prophet Shemaiah that God will not pour out his anger through Shishak, but rather Shishak will make Judah his vassal. Shishak loots the temple and also Rehoboam's home. When Rehoboam dies, his son Abijam takes the throne.
Abijam reigns for 3 years and does what is evil in the sight of the Lord. He wants to reclaim the northern 10 tribes. So he wants to war against Jeroboam for the rest of his lifetime. Abijam rebuked Jeroboam for his idolatry and so went to war against Jeroboam. And so 500,000 men of the Israelite troops were killed directly by God.
After Abijam's death, his son Asa takes the throne. Asa's grandmother, the queen mother, her name is Mecca. She is the granddaughter of Absalom. Zerah the Cushite amounts of an army of 1,000,000 men to come against Judah. But because Asa is strong with the Lord, they have victory over Zerah. After this, Asa makes many reforms and brings revival to God and fulfillment of the tabernacle. He also removes Mecca from being Queen Mother because of the obscene images of Asherah she has made. He cuts it down, crushes it, and burns it. Asa is loyal to Yahweh all the days of his life, but he is not able to do the abomination in the high places.
After the death of Asa, his son Jehoshaphat takes the throne. Jehoshaphat does what is good in the sight of the Lord. He walks in all the ways of his father David and introduced a new system of public instruction for the whole land based upon the book of the law. God grants Jehoshaphat riches in abundance, and Jehoshaphat sees greater benefit in alliance with Israel than in civil war. So he cements the union with Israel with the marriage of his son Jehoram with Athaliah, the daughter of King Ahab and Jezebel. This marriage will however be disastrous, as it will cancel any political and material advantages gained through the alliance.
On Jehoshaphat's deathbed, he gives wealth to all his 7 sons, but gives the crown to his eldest son Jehoram. When Jehoram takes the throne, he kills all his other brothers to secure his place as the rightful king. Because of this, the Edomites rebel and name their own king. When he goes to battle with them, he is surrounded, but he flees. Later on, a letter from the prophet Elijah comes to him saying that there will be calamity for both him and the people of Judah. Fulfilling this prophecy, God stirs up the Philistines there and the Arabians, and they come and plunder the royal palace. They take him and his wife and his children, leaving only his youngest son, Ahaziah in the throne. Fulfilling the next prophecy, Jehoram gains a gruesome disease and dies to no one's sorrow.
Ahaziah's only surviving son becomes king of Judah. Athaliah now occupies the powerful position of Queen Mother. Ahaziah reigns for just 1 year when he's caught in Jehu's coup as part of Jehu's program to wipe out all Jezebel's descendants. After his death, Athaliah tries to kill all the royal heirs. Only Ahaziah's infant son Joash is spared when he is hidden in the temple by the priest Jehoiada. When he is 7, Joash is crowned king over Judah under armed guards. Athaliah, now hearing of the singing and trumpeting, dashed in yelling, "Treason! Treason!" She was dragged out of the temple and killed.
Joash takes the throne when he's 7 years old and does good in the sight of the Lord all the days of his life, all the days that Jehoiada the high priest is alive. When Jehoiada dies, Joash does evil in the sight of the Lord by bringing idols to the temple. The Spirit of the Lord comes to Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, and Zechariah goes to speak to the king and his counselors. The king, Joash, in disobedience, has Zechariah killed where he stands, but later the king of Syria comes up against Judah in the wrath of God, and his own servants kill Joash.
After his death, Amaziah takes the throne. Amaziah makes preparations to go to war against the Edomites. He hires Israelite troops to help him, but a man of God warns him that God is not with Israel, and that he should go to war with God's help alone. So Amaziah dismisses the Israelite troops and goes to war and is victorious. Coming home, he brings Edomite gods. The anger of the Lord is upon him, and so he sends his servant to tell him that the utter foolishness of Amaziah, worshipping gods that could not even save their own people. Amaziah asked the prophet, "Have we made you the king's counselor?" Amaziah turned from following the Lord, and his servants killed him at the fortress of Lachish.
Taking the throne at 16, Uzziah is a powerful king and gains friendship back with Israel and fortifies his army. But in his pride, he goes to burn incense, but the high priest and 80 other valiant priests try to stop him, saying it is unlawful for him to do so. While holding the censer in his hand, he gets furious, and at that moment, God strikes him with leprosy. He is then isolated to a house until he dies.
Well trained by his father, Jotham maintained Judah's prosperity and military advantages. He does what is right in the sight of the Lord, but the people keep on acting corruptly. The Edomites rebel, but Jotham defeats them and forces them to pay tribute. He reigns for 16 years and dies. His son Ahaz takes the throne. Ahaz does what is evil in the sight of the Lord. He burns incenses to pagan gods on every mountain, on every hill, and under every green tree, and even burns his sons to pagan gods. On his trip to Damascus, Ahaz admires a pagan altar set up and sends a plan home to the high priest, giving him orders to build it. When he comes home, he makes this altar the official place of worship, in place of the brazen altar prescribed by the law of Moses. So God does not bless Ahaz, and problems and plague attack his reign from several directions. First, the Philistines rebel, then Syria and Israel gain an alliance against him. Hearing of this alliance, Ahaz prepares to go to war, but God sends Isaiah to tell him that he should not be afraid of the Syrian and Israel alliance, but to trust in God. But he does not listen to this, as he had already made preparations to ask for the king of Assyria for help. So he sends a letter to the king of Assyria, pleading him for help. The king of Assyria later replies, but he defeats Philistine, and Israel. But instead of Judah becoming an independent nation as Ahaz had hoped for it, it became an Assyrian vassal. Ahaz then dies, and his son Hezekiah takes the throne.
Judah was an Assyrian vassal when Hezekiah came to the throne. When Hezekiah was made king, he does what is good in the sight of the Lord than any king before him or any king after him. He brings great reforms and brings back true temple worship. He also removes the brazen serpent in which Moses had made as it had become a thing of worship. After hearing of an anti-Assyrian rebellion and going against the advice of Isaiah, Hezekiah mounts his army with great weapons and gets ready to have war with the Assyrians. When hearing of this, the Assyrian ambassador comes and talks to them and says that they have to submit or they'll have a full-fledged war with the Assyrian army. So they have to pay tribute to the Assyrian king. Hezekiah then amounts great gold from his own revenues and from the temple to give to the king of Assyria. When getting this, the king of Assyria is not satisfied with the show of submission. So he sent his armies to stay outside the gates of the land. His general boasts in Hebrew that it is foolish for them to trust in their Lord, just as all the other nations fell to their knees to the Assyrian convoys. When they left, they again sent a scroll, but again boasting of their many victories. Hezekiah brings this scroll to Isaiah and all the other people in the temple and cries to God. The word of the Lord comes to Isaiah, and Isaiah says God will defend the city. That very night, God sends an angel, and the angel slays and cuts down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. Years later, the word of the Lord again comes to Isaiah, but this time God says Hezekiah will soon die. Hezekiah, when hearing of this, weeps to the Lord, and the Lord grants him another 15 years. After this, the Babylonians come and congratulate Hezekiah on his victories and on his recovery, and welcome him as an ally. In his pride, Hezekiah shows the Babylonians the many treasures of the temple. This makes God angry, and God sends Isaiah to tell him that one day all these treasures will be in the Babylonian hands.
After the death of Hezekiah, his son Manasseh takes the throne. Manasseh does what is evil in the sight of the Lord. He rebuilds the high places, raises up altars to Baal, practices witchcraft, and even burns his sons to the god Molech in the valley of Hinnom. Manasseh seduces Judah to do more evil than the nations that God had destroyed before the children of Israel. So God sends Habakkuk to tell him that I, the Lord, will bring calamity upon this nation, that whoever hears of this, both his ears will tingle. But the people of Manasseh do not listen to this, so the punishment finally falls. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, comes and takes him, and he is bound. But he weeps and cries to the Lord, and the Lord brings him back, and he tries to reverse his earlier effects of his reign.
When Manasseh dies, his son Ammon takes the throne. When Ammon is in power, he raises up all the idolatrous images and gods of stone that his father had then cast away. When hearing this, his servants conspire against him and kill him. When he dies, his son Josiah takes the throne when he is 8 years old. Josiah does what is good in the sight of the Lord, and in his 18th year of reigning, a priest finds an ancient scroll talking of the law. When Josiah reads of this scroll, he weeps, as it shows the things they have not been doing and how they have not been working towards the law. A prophetess comes and tells them that calamity will fall on Judah as they have been practicing idol worship. But Joash brings a great revival. Josiah brings a great revival in that he brings back the Sabbath like it has never ever been since the days of the judges. He then digs out the false prophets' graves, puts them on the altar, defiling it, and burns it down to the ground. In the end of his reign, Josiah goes to battle against the Egyptians as they are trying to cross over to the Assyrians. Foolishly, doing this, he gets killed in battle.
At Josiah's deathbed, the people choose Jehoaz to become the king, the middle son of Josiah, preferring him above his elder son Eliakim. He does what is evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Egyptians come and take him as prisoner and anoint Eliakim, the elder son of Josiah, to become king, and imposes a heavy tribute upon him. Jehoiakim is an incompetent ruler. Instead of leaving the people of Judah to just pay the king of Egypt, they also have to pay him so he can build palaces for himself. Jeremiah is told by the Lord to take a stand in the temple and tell the people that this temple be reduced to ruins. There is a violent reaction, so he is taken out. The Lord also tells Jeremiah to make a scroll containing all the warnings against Judah. He does so, but since he's not allowed in the temple, he asks his servant Baruch to read it in the temple, but the king sends for it. The king cuts it up and burns it. After 3 years, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, defeats Egypt and Assyria and makes Jehoiakim his vassal, and takes the population of Judah and the men of royalty lineage. Daniel and his 3 friends are also taken in this captivity. Jehoiakim eventually rebels against Babylon, despite the warning of Jeremiah to submit, because the Lord has given Judah into the hands of Babylon. Any rebellion against Babylon was rebellion against the Lord.
When he was 18 years old, Jehoiachin only rules for 3 months. Only rules for 3 months. Nebuchadnezzar, coming for the second time, comes and takes Jehoiachin and 10,000 other skilled labor men back to Babylon. He knows Menachem, the uncle of Jehoiachin, as king. He changes his name to Zedekiah. He changes his name to Zedekiah and anoints him as king, as puppet king. When leaving, Zedekiah does evil in the sight of the Lord and commits to the false prophets in joining an anti-Babylonian rebellion group, saying that the yoke has been broken. Jeremiah, of hearing this, comes and tells them of the false prophets and tells them that if they do not submit to Babylonians, they are not submitting to God. They do not hearken to his word, and Nebuchadnezzar comes again, this time with a siege. The land gets sieged for 18 months, and in 588 BC, the king Zedekiah tries to escape the city walls, but is captured by Babylonian armies. He is then taken back to Babylon with his family and his 2 sons. Zedekiah has to watch his 2 sons die, and after this he is then blinded, just as the prophet Ezekiel had prophesied that he will go to Babylon but not see the land. When the siege of Jerusalem is taking place, but Nebuchadnezzar gives strict orders to his general not to harm Jeremiah. Jeremiah is then given the option to come to Babylon under the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, or to stay with Gedaliah, the then appointed leader of Judah. Jeremiah chooses to stay with Gedaliah, and they stay with the poorest that have been left in Judah.
In summary, though the southern kingdom was smaller and weaker than the northern kingdom, it remained much closer to God. Many kings were good, but the ones which were bad weren't so evil as that of Israel. The decline of the southern kingdom was not so rapid as that of Israel, but its people failed to learn the lesson from Israel's devastating punishment. So in 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, takes Judah into exile. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on Facebook. Our page is called Gravity. It's a Sure Thing.